Hi, everybody, and welcome to week 6. We are going to be talking about movers and shakers in the recovery movement, and many of them started in the 40s and 50s and even early 60s. Others have made a significant impact within the last 20 to 30 years. And so you're going to be reading about some of their work, and it's going to be a lot of reading, but I think really important reading. So there's a long history of people with mental illness being mistreated by professionals. I think that's been pretty significantly demonstrated with our class so far. And there's a long history of significant stigma, prejudice, and discrimination against people who have mental illness. We've seen on many occasions, and you'll see a couple of videos this week, where it's pretty clear that infringement on the rights of people with mental illness, like the right to refuse treatment, the right to refuse medications, that those infringement on those rights is more common than it should be, in my opinion. Oftentimes, because family members are afraid of what's happening with the person with mental illness, they just want them in an institution or on medication, because that's how family members feel the person is safe and they can relax and not worry about the person, as long as they're being compliant and doing what the professionals say. So oftentimes the family members side with the professionals rather than siding with their crazy relative. And you can understand why the system often carries more credibility than the person with mental illness who may not want to take the medication. And understandably, all of this mistreatment has caused psychiatric survivors to sort of distrust the system and sort of stick together or band together for support. And what they've found in turning to one another for support, that many people found recovery and discovered choices and learned self-advocacy skills. So the help that they have found most helpful, that we have found most helpful, is from other people like us. So first there's Howie the Harp. You saw a clip of him last week. And Loren Mosier, you're going to be reading about his work in the late 40s, early 50s and onward with the Soteria Project. Judy Chamberlain, who's just a tremendous advocate. And William Anthony, who worked right out of the Empowerment Center at Boston University. Mary Ellen Copeland, who really published and thought about how to keep people well with the Wellness Recovery Action Plan that she developed with a group of other folks who had been hospitalized for mental illness. We have Sherry Mead with Intentional Peer Support and another article called Crisis and Connection, which are super important. Ted Chabasinski, who received ECT as a child and was institutionalized as a child and became a civil rights lawyer and an advocate for the rights of people with mental illness. Peter Breggin, who is a psychiatrist who has gone against his own profession and posed a lot of questions about, particularly around medications and shock treatment. Pat Deegan, who you read her work early on, I'm going to ask you to revisit or just skim read her Recovery as a Journey of the Heart. But she also has a little primer on medications as a tool in recovery, which I think is important. And Daniel Fisher, who you saw early on in the course, the first week of the course, talking about hope, he also talks about recovery. Let me go back for a minute. So of all these people, Lauren Mosier, William Anthony, and Peter Breggin are all professionals. Peter Breggin and Lauren Mosier are both psychiatrists, I believe. William Anthony is a psychologist. Every other advocate and leader in the recovery movement is a person with mental illness who has experienced institutions and treatment, and that has spurred this recovery movement and a different way, or a new way, a better way in their mind of supporting people with mental illness. So it's really important as you look over this week's content that you understand that the vast majority of the people who are advocating for these recovery principles are people who have been there, who have been institutionalized, many of whom have been mistreated, and know that there's more to supporting one another than the professional establishment. So this week you have two assignments. One is the discussion prompt. There, but by the grace of God, go I. You're going to see a couple of clips that are now 5 or 6 years old. But I am sure it's only a matter of time before we see others similar. So what is this all about? Read the prompt, watch the videos, and ask yourself, if I am frightened, overwhelmed, feeling really intense feelings, are these the approaches that are best to approach someone who is having these intense feelings? So read the prompt, watch the videos, which are kind of difficult to watch, but it is the reality for many people who are institutionalized. And then our next assignment is really asking you to reflect on your own behavior and your own goals. How do you feel when someone suggests that you love the people who you work with, or your clients? Or is it safer for you to remain distant in the name of professional boundaries? In some ethical codes in particular, there's in some agencies even have pretty strict rules about gifts and those kinds of things. So what does that mean in terms of professional boundaries, and how does that get in the way, or does it get in the way of a solid connection and relationship with the people that you work with? And so I'd like you to explore that tension between boundaries and connection. And lastly, probably the most important question is, when you see someone undergoing some kind of mistreatment, are you going to have the courage to advocate for recovery principles? And it can get really dicey to be an advocate. And weighing the pros and cons about, do I bring this up, do I not bring this up, it is often a fodder for a pretty rich discussion. So I'm hoping that this will give you a chance to think about, what if that was me, and when it isn't me, am I going to support people with love and connection? And how does that get in the way of my own self-care, or will that get in the way of my own self-care? And when are boundaries appropriate, and when are boundaries a barrier to a connection and relationship? So enjoy the week, good luck, and as usual, shoot me an email if you have any questions. Enjoy.